Hey everyone, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the radius in this video. The radius is the lateral bone of the forearm. Let's go ahead and hide all this other stuff here. Here it is. We can see where it articulates with the humerus, the side of the head articulates with the ulna, and then the distal end, which is larger, articulates with a couple of our carpal bones in our wrist. So let's go ahead and run through the structures of the proximal end first. There aren't a whole lot. So the first structure is the head of the radius, which is right here. Kind of has this donut looking shape. It's going to articulate medially with the ulna and then superiorly with the humerus. The specific portion of the head that articulates with the humerus, specifically the capitulum of the humerus, is right here, and it's called the fovea. So that is the fovea of the radius. Below the head, we have the neck, which is aptly named. It's a skinnier region below the head, so neck is a good name for it. And there it is, the neck of the radius. Below that is this fairly large structure right here. This is called the radial tuberosity. We're going to add some muscle back because this is the attachment site of the biceps brachii. So let's go ahead and add in some muscle. There we go. And I should preface that it's actually one of the attachments of the biceps brachii. There's brachialis, which would attach to the ulnar tuberosity. So now you can really see the biceps attaching there. It's what makes the biceps such a powerful supinator. It attaches to the radius and is able to rotate that radius externally to cause supination. Alright, and that's it for the proximal end of the radius. So let's go to the shafts. Now, when we talk about the shafts of long bones, what we're typically talking about is their borders. So if we add the ulna back in, we can see that the ulna is medial to the radius, which means that this border here, the medial border of the radius, is going to be sharpest. If we were to cut the radius and then look down at it from a superior view, we would see a triangle that looks like this. Now remember, the ulna looked like this, and that kind of makes sense because they're connected in the middle here by the interosseous membrane. So let's go ahead and name the borders of the radius. So this sharp border right here, that is the medial border because it points medially. So medial border. But remember, on the ulna, it was actually the lateral border because the lateral border was pointing laterally at the radius. But on the radius, the sharp border is the medial border pointing back at the ulna. This would be the anterior border and the posterior border. So we can label a few of these. This sharpest border here would be the medial border. And then in the front, you have the anterior border. And you cannot see the posterior border, it's back behind. We can see the anterior surface though, which is this whole flat surface in the front of the radius. Unfortunately, in this view, we can't see the lateral surface or the posterior surface, so we'll have to rotate it. But this would be the lateral surface on this side, and the posterior surface would be behind. So let's go ahead and rotate. Let's rotate it a few times, actually. I don't know if you're really able to appreciate in this model that this border here is the sharpest. It's much easier to tell on a real bone. That would be the medial border. This would be the anterior border. And then if we rotate, we're able to see the posterior border and then the posterior surface. Now some tips for knowing posterior border and posterior surface. Something that's helpful is some quick methods for knowing what's the front and what's the back of the bone. So Something about the anterior radius is the very smooth, it almost looks like a spoon if you were to pick it up, anterior surface here at the distal end. And if you look from the side, it kind of even curves forward. It's almost like this little spoon here. That always points anteriorly. So that's kind of helpful for me to be able to tell the front from the back. Also in the back, we have a series of tubercles and grooves. So here's a tubercle, which we'll name later. There's a couple little grooves here. That's how I know it's posterior. Anyway, so that is the shaft of the radius. Let's move on to the distal end. So we have an articular surface with the head of the ulna. Oops. Actually, this is okay. Let's leave this here. So here we can see it's partly obscured by the ulna. We can see part of what's called the ulnar notch, which is where the head of the ulna articulates with the distal radius. Now here, let's draw it again with the ulna removed. Again, that is called the ulnar notch. Like the ulna, the radius has a styloid process. Here it is. If you follow your thumb down to its base, you'll probably be able to feel this pretty large bump right here, called the radial styloid process. On the posterior aspect of the radius, we have something called Lister's tubercle, and you actually might be able to feel this as well. There's a muscle that sort of hooks around this tubercle here. It's pretty cool. It comes down like at an angle and hooks around this and goes out to the tip of your thumb. So if you give a thumbs up, you're using that muscle. But anyway, the structure specifically we're talking about is right here, and it's called Lister's tubercle. Lister's tubercle. There's also 4 grooves. I won't ask that on a quiz because they're essentially non-existent here, but there are a few grooves for tendons on the back of the radius to be mindful of. Lastly, we'll look at 2 facets with the carpal bones. This is pretty cool. If we let's go ahead and remove the 2 bones. So I just removed the scaphoid and the lunate to show you their articular surfaces with the radius. This is the scaphoid facet and the lunate facet. Not to be confused with this over here, which is the ulnar notch. So scaphoid facet, lunate facet. Now let's bring everything back in. There you go. You can see the scaphoid and the lunate. And then where they articulate on the radius, we call it the scaphoid facet and the lunate facet. The scaphoid is more lateral, so it's going to be next to the styloid process. So scaphoid starts with an S, styloid starts with an S, that might be helpful. And then lunate, again, is more medial. It's next to the ulna, which has an L in it. So there you go, ulna, lunate, styloid, scaphoid. And guys, that is it for the radius, which is the lateral bone of the forearm. Thanks for watching. See you next time.